Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Nick's Yemen Roundup. This edition covers the time period between 8 May and 18 May 2025. Apologies, we're a bit late in getting this out. I actually just moved transcontinentally and the internet was out yesterday. We were supposed to get it out. But we are here and we are putting out our second edition of this call. And we're very excited to inform everybody about what's been going on in Yemen over the course of probably, a 10-day period, not very long ago. And just to give you a reminder, this is intended to be a regular product that provides a comprehensive overview of what's been going on in Yemen from like kind of political, military, and economic humanitarian perspective in a way that doesn't chase international headlines. So a lot of the coverage that we see in Yemen, on Yemen in particular in the West, over the course of the last several months now, it's been very not sensationalist, but it's been very, oh, the Houthis are attacking here, they're launching missiles at Israel. You only really get the high level sort of overview, even in the more in-depth international pieces. And so, in my opinion, this creates a dearth of knowledge about what's actually going on in the country on the local level, the sort of national level, and also sort of as it relates to the regional and international levels. So this is intended as a product to fill that gap, hopefully, and get people up to speed, and hopefully be of use to people who follow Yemen regularly, who may like the fact that someone else can do the roundup for them and try to bring stuff together, but also novices as a kind of educational tool. So we're very excited to do that. This product is also intended, perhaps more selfishly, as an advertisement for my own services as a political and military and economics researcher focused on the Middle East. My name is Nick J. Brumfield. I have an MA in Arab Studies from Georgetown University and a decade's worth of experience analyzing Middle East politics professionally. I am regularly quoted in international publications and do this for a living. So this is intended kind of as an advertisement, perhaps, for my freelance services for anyone interested. Really, in not just in Yemen. Yemen has been the country that I've been most focused on for the last 7 or 8 years now. But I do have a deep experience in sort of living in, working in, and studying and researching the Middle East. So please feel free to reach out at the contact email info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com for anybody who is interested in sort of if you have political risk research needs, other research needs, please feel free to reach out. I do have extensive experience in project and data management as well. I'm hoping to roll out some other products, perhaps a bit more exclusive products as it relates to data and GIS capabilities in the coming weeks or months. But yeah, this is intended to more or less kind of be hopefully the public facing aspect of my freelance services to show you what I'm capable of, give you an example of kind of what I'm doing, but also provide a service to everybody as we're doing it. So thank you so much. We can go ahead and get started. Starting off with politics and governance in Yemen over the course of the past week as it relates to international affairs. So this is as it relates to Yemen and engaging with the wider world. And we did see quite a bit of that over the course of the past week from a number of perspective, starting off kind of just generally with international engagements, in particular from the Yemeni government side. You don't necessarily see the Houthi aligned authorities engaging internationally all that much, just due to the fact that they aren't the internationally recognized government of Yemen. So yeah, starting off, we did see over the course of between 11 and 15 May, the newly appointed prime minister of the Yemeni government, internationally recognized Yemeni government, Salim bin Barak, who was just appointed in early May, was engaging diplomatically with a bunch of representatives from very important countries for Yemen. It seems everyone was in Riyadh to just kind of, get the pulse on him. He is a known entity internationally. He prior to becoming the prime minister, he was the finance minister, so he does have experience in Western capitals. Just prior to his appointment, he was actually in DC negotiating with the IMF. But we did see a bunch of different representatives, including from the UK, France, the United States, the United Arab Emirates, China, the European Union, Germany, and the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh to talk to him. We also did see in Riyadh as well. I believe all of these meetings took place in Riyadh on 14 May. Presidential Leadership Council member Idris al-Zubaydi met with French Ambassador Korm Kamoun. And just following up on a day after, we also did see the PLC member and Southern Giants Brigade's commander, Abu Zara al-Mahrami, also meet with Korm Kamoun. This is interesting because both of these members of the PLC are United Arab Emirates backed, so I'm not sure if there's any significance to that, but that is a pattern noticed there. We also did see on 15 May, Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashad Al-Alimi met with the Russian Charge d'Affaires Yevgeny Kudrov in Riyadh, and the day after that, we did see Foreign Minister Dr. Shaya Zindani meet with the Russian Middle East Special Envoy Mikhail Bogdanov in Riyadh, I believe. This is noteworthy. Mikhail Bogdanov is one of the major, obviously one of the major penholders on the Middle East and Yemen in the sort of Russian foreign ministry, or I believe he's directly from the president's office. You don't him coming to the Middle East is notable. Of course, we also did see U.S. President Donald Trump in the region as well, between I believe 12 and 16 or 18 May. To my understanding, not to Yemen. Yemen was kind of, one of the things that they said that they would talk about. But in terms of public statements, in terms of major developments, we didn't see all that much emerge from his visit to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both of whom are major stakeholders in Yemen, but also Qatar. Most of it seemed to focus on economic deals with regards to AI and chips and that kind of thing. Yemen didn't come up so much. Moving over to international affairs as it relates to the peace process in Yemen, which has been mostly stalled since December of 2023. We did see on 14 May UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg give an address to his monthly address to the UN Security Council. He does this mid-month, most months. In that, not too much to sort of pull from that, kind of his normal talking points there. He did welcome the U.S. Houthi ceasefire that was announced earlier in the month, as well as condemned the ongoing exchanges between the Houthis attacking Israel, but also Israel attacking vital civilian infrastructure in Yemen, and reiterated his call for the need for a roadmap that was, seemingly about to get signed in December, late 2023, but then obviously October 7th happened, and that kind of threw a wrench in everything. He was seemingly defensive about the roadmap. He iterated, concerns that, is the roadmap that was kind of drawn up in 2023 still applicable now in 2025 after everything that's happened in the last 2 years? And he did state that, yes, it is. Of note, he did say that there were moments in recent months where the resumption of the civil war in Yemen has been very close, which for those tracking, are the Houthis going to attack? Is the Yemeni government going to attack? I'm not sure what information that he has with regards to that, but that was just a very striking line for me from his address there. Last but not least, with regards to international affairs, we did see a kind of a big delegation from the Yemeni government head to Baghdad this week as part of the Baghdad summit, which brought a bunch of the Arab League together to discuss a bunch of issues, most notably Palestine, of course. So we did see Foreign Minister Shaya Zindani attend the Arab League ministerial meeting in Baghdad a couple days before that, and then on 17 May we did see Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashad Al-Alimi, who's pictured here on the right, as well as the other PLC members, Uthman Majali and Farag Bahsani, also attended. Noteworthy, Majali is a Saudi-backed member of the council. Majali and Alimi are both Saudi-backed members of the council. Bahsani is more UAE-backed. So perhaps some council cooperation there. Whenever they're in the same room, that is noteworthy. If you track their movements over the course of several months, you notice that the UAE-backed members of the council and the Saudi-backed members of the council don't often stay in the same city. So it's interesting when they're traveling together. Sort of during his visit there, PLC Chairman Alimi sort of gave a speech. He supported Palestinians, people fight for freedom, while at the same time condemning the Houthis and what he called Iranian interference in Yemen through the Houthi movement. We also did see on 17 May the Baghdad Declaration from that summit called for an end to the Gaza war, as well as a bunch of other things. Notably, it also iterated support for the Presidential Leadership Council in Yemen, which is not it's not like it's a big thing compared to everything else, but it's interesting that was included in that statement. Moving on over to politics and governance, kind of from more domestically thinking from the Yemeni government perspective, really the big story this week has been the ongoing protests against deteriorating service conditions and just living standards, in particular in Aden, but also elsewhere in Yemeni government-held areas. This week, the main story was a series of very evocative women's protests that drew a lot of attention. The first on 10 May, the second on 16 May, I believe both in Aden's Khor Maksar district. These are large protests of all women, or mostly women, calling on both the Yemeni government as well as the Southern Transitional Council, which is technically part of the Yemeni government, but also kind of its own thing, and it exercises security control over Aden for improved service conditions. This follows in recent weeks massive electricity outages in Aden. We're talking, I believe it was getting up to 17, maybe 20 hours a day in terms of power outages in Aden. And so, that is constantly a thorn in the Yemeni government side. It's a perennial concern every summer or every hot season. When the temperatures rise, humidity is really high up, and then the electricity goes out, a lot of people get really angry because there's no air conditioning, there's no anything, and so we do see a lot of protests. So we did see those protests, notably following the 16 May protest. There was, according to certain reports, reports of infiltrators who attacked security forces that were doing security ostensibly at the protest. Some referred to these as STC aligned security forces. And so we did see on 17 May, the Aden Security Committee, even though there were no casualties seemingly from these events, they did issue a ban on protests after these infiltrators. And so we often do see a crackdown on civic activism. This largely peaceful protests. We've had multiple peaceful protests. Sometimes you'll have not necessarily violent protests, but people lighting tires in the streets to blockade roads. Something a bit more confrontational. But I don't imagine the ban is going to necessarily stop those people from doing that. But it's interesting that we are kind of seeing a crackdown there. We also did see the other major kind of story this week is that Prime Minister Salman bin Barak, who was appointed in early May following the ouster of former Prime Minister Ahmed Awad bin Mubarak, is still not come to Aden. He's still based in Riyadh, and there are questions of when is he going to come to Riyadh, because the Prime Minister's primary responsibility is ostensibly to be based in Aden and running all the sort of ministries, although a lot of them are still based in Riyadh. The Yemeni government felt defensive enough about this to actually issue an official statement on their state news media, stating that he is going to stay in Riyadh until urgent support is obtained. So you can imagine perhaps he's negotiating or talking with the Saudis, perhaps with other international actors for financial support. The Saudis, on a periodic basis, most often quarterly, will release large sums of money to the Yemeni government to keep services going, to basically allow them to pay the bills, because since 2022, the Houthis have blockaded any oil exports from Yemeni government-held areas, which accounts for something like 60 to 70% of the budget. So since that has occurred, the Yemeni government's been in an abysmal financial state, really, and so they're dependent on Saudi Arabia for these to make salaries and other such things. So you can imagine perhaps he's having discussions with the Saudis about conditions, about what he needs to do, or something with regards to that, and he'll come back perhaps when that's released, or based on the phrasing of that and the timing, we are kind of towards perhaps a time period when they would release some of that he'll come when that comes, perhaps. Yeah, and so here's a picture of the newly appointed Prime Minister Salim bin Barak. He's been involved in the Yemeni government for a long while now. I believe he's been finance minister or was finance minister since 2019. He was appointed by President Hadi. He has served under multiple cabinets and prime ministers. So that's the guy who has his hands on the financial portfolio. Obviously, a very important person. Haven't seen a whole lot from him publicly. You don't necessarily see too much about him. But it is interesting that they would select him. Particularly, he comes across as a more reserved guy, in particular in comparison to Prime Minister Ahmadawad bin Mubarak, who is very much a public figure, very much liked to court the press, that kind of thing. So we'll see if anything comes of that. Moving on over to politics and governance in Yemen from the Houthi movement perspective, we did see some developments, most of them, to be honest, relating to the detention of various civilian critics. So we did see on 9 May, Houthi-aligned authorities organized rallies celebrating American failure. You can see here a picture on the right of a protest or a demonstration in Sana'a on 9 May, sort of celebrating what the Houthis are framing as more or less their victory against the Americans for the 6 May ceasefire, which saw the Houthis agree to stop shooting at American ships and the U.S. to stop bombing Houthi-held areas of Yemen, but notably completely excluding Houthi attacks on Israel, which have been continuing. Both the U.S. and the Houthis have framed this as a victory for themselves. Honestly, I would frame it more as a Houthi victory. The Houthis were not actually firing at any U.S. ships prior to the start of the U.S. bombing campaign against the Houthis in mid-March. They did start shooting at U.S. warships after that, but they have actually not. They hadn't fired at any civilian kind of commercial ships since December 2024. So some people have said, oh yeah, the attacks went way down as a result of the bombing campaign. And to be honest, I don't necessarily see that. I see the Houthis having focused more on attacks on Israel and on U.S. warships. And in terms of numbers, I would need to look more closely at it. But in terms of massive drop-offs of Houthi attacks against commercial shipping, they just weren't doing that prior. So I don't see interpreting that as a massive drop as reading the data properly. So they are celebrating that. They are kind of mobilizing across areas under their control, holding rallies, that kind of thing. Potentially using those to recruit more people. But really the most of the major sort of stories coming out relate to Houthi authorities kind of persecuting or detaining various civil society actors, that kind of thing. So we did see on 12 May a Houthi-aligned terrorism court held a session for journalist Mohammed al-Mayahi with, it's not very clear, I think he's on charges of espionage or something along those lines. There's been a lot of people coming out and condemning this trial as them again going after people who write and critique for a living, and they don't, the Houthi authorities do not like independent voices, and I think it's pretty clear that they want to quash most of those. We also did see on 14 May pro-Yemeni government media report the Houthi abduction of a lawyer, Mohammed Luqman, who I believe was criticized the Houthis on social media. And then we also did see on 18 May the Yemeni Journalist Syndicate, I believe it's more Yemeni government aligned, but it's for all of Yemen, condemned the Houthi detention of the Mar journalist Fouad al-Nahari, pictured here on the right. Again, another journalist. He was following up on Houthi detention of a civil society activist, and they detained him. So yeah, not great in terms of that this week. Moving on over to military and security. Not a whole lot to report with regards to the front lines between the Houthi-aligned forces and anti-Houthi forces, but there's been a fair bit of activity over the course of the past week in eastern Yemen, primarily in Yemeni government-held areas of eastern Yemen, kind of going from east to west. and also chronologically. We did see kind of more UAE-backed, more STC-aligned military forces seemingly sort of step up activity against Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So we did see on 12 May the Hadrami Elite Forces, which are a UAE-backed group that controls much of the Hadramaut coast, sort of highlighted in orange here, claimed raids on AQAP positions in the Araf area of the Hadramaut Plateau. This is an area, this is kind of, so Hadramaut's divided into the coast, which is low-lying, and then the plateau, which is sort of in the north. This is also a major divide within anti-Houthi forces politically. So more UAE, STC-aligned forces in the south, more Yemeni government, Islah, Saudi-backed forces in the north. So the fact that they did do an operation on the Hadramaut Plateau is noteworthy. Yeah, so they did claim raids on AQAP positions there. Further to the west in Shabwa Governorate, we did see on 12 May, STC-aligned Shabwa Defense Forces claimed the arrest of two AQAP leaders, Abu Asim al-Walidi and Hussam Musafir. So yeah, so that is noteworthy. Perhaps we do see a lot of AQAP activity, in particular against STC-aligned forces, kind of in this pocket of northeast Abiyan Governorate and southwest Shabwa Governorate. So they said that these people were trying to infiltrate from Abiyan to Marib Governorate, is what they said. And so Shabwa Defense Forces claimed to have arrested them. We also did see around Bayhan on 13 May, a Houthi drone attack claimed to kill one civilian in Bayhan district, which, you know, it's not out of the ordinary, nothing too crazy with regards to that. Further west in Abiyan Governorate, we did see on 17 May as well, Houthi drone attack injure a southern resistance fighter in Laudar district, sort of right along the front lines with Beta there, but nothing too crazy to report there. Let's see here. Still figuring out how to deal with annotations here. Cool. There we go. All right, yeah. Moving on over to military and security from the Yemen air war perspective. So this is kind of looking at Houthi attacks on Israel and Israeli attacks on Houthi-held areas as part of one coherent air war. So yeah, in terms of, we did see a continued exchange between Houthi and Israeli sort of airstrikes over the course of the last week. Starting off the week on 9 May, we did see the Houthis claim a missile attack on Ben Gurion Airport, as well as another drone attack on Tel Aviv. Israel intercepted this missile. So yeah, so you can read all of that yourself. I won't read out all of them, but yeah, multiple Houthi missile attacks. In particular, on Ben Gurion Airport, the Houthis have proclaimed what they call an air blockade on Israel and said that they're going to blockade the airport from being able to operate. That is Israel's major airport. So yeah, so this isn't just them talking. Israel has actually claimed interception of multiple ones of these. Not every Houthi claim of attack is true or successful, and they always say that they hit, but they almost never hit. But yeah, so this is very much going, and it is very much affecting air traffic. A Houthi attack on 15 May did temporarily close the airport after a missile launch was detected. Israel claimed to intercept most of these. On the other side, in Yemen, we did see the Houthis claim an Israeli airstrike on Hodeidah, which is the main Red Sea port here in the southern portion of this photo. Although that was disputed, there were other people who said that this airstrike didn't actually occur, wasn't confirmed. I didn't see too much evidence that it had actually occurred. But we did see throughout the week between 11 and 14 May, Israel issue multiple evacuation orders for all of these Red Sea ports. Whoa, annotation's a little weird there. Where they said, oh, we're going to bomb these, evacuate, and then not strike them. So this was perceived perhaps as a psychological warfare, or maybe Israel trying to be able to interrupt port activity without necessarily having to expend the resources. So, for instance, after one of these evacuation orders, we did see reports that two tankers at Salif had moved away from the docks. This is noteworthy because Salif is primarily a grain port. And if they're loading tankers at Salif, that is interesting. I need to do some more research to see what's going on there, but that is noteworthy. We also, but we did see on 16 May, Israel launch actual strikes against Hodeidah and Salif ports. So yeah, Salif is again, the grain port. Hodeidah is kind of just the major general port. Ever since the Israeli strikes in July 2024, it hasn't received any fuel. So we're talking cargo, maybe some grain. Salif is supposed to be more food, but if they are loading fuel there, that is noteworthy. I believe maybe they've loaded fuel there before, but it's primarily a grain port. Ras Isa is the main fuel, has been the main fuel port for the last little while. But of course, we've seen multiple airstrikes against that over the course of the last several months. Most notably on 17 May, the United States launched a massive airstrike there that really, really significantly damaged the port, killed dozens of people. So we're still kind of seeing what the aftermath of that is in terms of operations. We have seen vessels since dock at Ras Isa, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right. Elsewhere, in terms of military and security, looking at smuggling. There were two notable smuggling instances this week. The first on 10 May, when the National Resistance Forces, this is the Tariq Saleh-run armed group backed by the United Arab Emirates on Yemen's southwest coast, announced that it had seized two dhows from Djibouti. This is right across the Red Sea from southwest Yemen. It's a major transit point for migrants, for instance. A lot of traffic going through Djibouti to Yemen. So two dhows that were smuggling weapons components, reportedly en route to Ras Isa. We did see that on 10 May. They claimed they didn't state when they had done this, but they issued the statement on 10 May that they had done this. And according to them, they seized large amounts of electric aluminum detonators, 36 kilometers of detonator cord, 64 satellite communications devices. These materials were seemingly manufactured in India, in particular Hyderabad. Unclear exactly what's going on there. It's clear that it's probably Houthi weapons and everything sort of moving through the traditional smuggling networks. The Houthis have a very long history of smuggling weapons along the west coast, as well as other areas of Yemen that they don't necessarily control, but can still smuggle components through. Elsewhere, we did see on 16 May, SDC-aligned forces, I believe in Shabwa, claimed to interdict Starlink devices, allegedly bound for the Houthis. This is noteworthy because they said that they were going to use these Starlink devices for Houthi positions that had difficult communications sort of setups, sort of difficult positions there. I'm somewhat suspect of this claim because the Houthis are very much opposed to the use of Starlink, in part, probably in large part, because it's a U.S. company that shares its information almost certainly, or can share its information with the United States government. So the Yemeni government actually approved Starlink internet access back in September of 2024. And actually just received its first official shipment of Starlink devices this past week. But the Houthis have said this is a grave threat to Yemeni sovereignty because they don't want people using, Starlink internet that one, they don't control. The Houthis, by virtue of controlling the capital Sana'a, have controlled historically most of Yemen's internet infrastructure. Even even Yemeni government military units have to use the telecommunication networks going through Sana'a. Or historically they have, at least. And so they don't control it, so they can't censor it, they can't do a lot of stuff with it. But also, yeah, they're afraid that this is a ripe espionage tool for the United States, of course. I think that's a fair concern for them. So the fact that SDC aligned forces claim to interdict Starlink devices heading to the Houthis is something. more likely, people across Houthi-held areas of Yemen love Starlink services because it's fast, unlike Houthi internet, and it's not censored or monitored like Houthi internet. So you see a lot of people coming up with like internet cafes. It's very expensive for a Starlink device, but entrepreneurs setting up internet cafes where they have a Starlink device that people can come and kind of share it and use it, that kind of thing. So yeah, very, very interesting to see there. Moving on over from military and security to humanitarian and economic issues, starting off with humanitarian affairs, it's pretty bleak. So this week, really, most of the humanitarian affairs stuff was the UN messaging how it doesn't have enough money to prioritize really Yemen humanitarian stuff, and how they're doing things to try to mitigate that by restructuring resources and that kind of thing. So we did see on 13 May the UN or UNOCHA put out its statement kind of explaining the addendum to the Yemen. It's not called the Humanitarian Response Plan anymore. It's the HNRP rather than the HRP. But they essentially came up with an addendum to reprioritize resource distribution among humanitarians in Yemen amid the fact that we're almost halfway through the year and we're only at 9% funding for the Yemen Humanitarian Response Plan. So this is abysmally low. It's Yemen funding to humanitarian stuff in Yemen has been going down significantly over the last couple of years, in part due to the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, and abduction, perhaps more importantly, of humanitarian actors in Sana'a. Back in June 2024, a bunch of humanitarian workers are still in Houthi-held custody on charges of espionage that, folks haven't heard from a lot of them for a long time. And so you're seeing just a general pullback for that. Obviously, the Trump administration's dissolution of U.S. aid and just general pullback from international humanitarian funding as well has played a part. But 9% funding, that is very, very low. So we did see, following that on 14 May, UNOCHA head Tom Fletcher briefed the UN Security Council on the humanitarian crisis following UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg. And he said that we're expecting kind of pipeline gaps to start showing up as a result of these funding cuts in June and July, when malnutrition is expected to increase. Moving on over to humanitarian and economic issues in Yemen from more of the economic side, really two main stories this week: infrastructure and banking. So transportation is getting it's been a big week for transportation in Yemen. First off, of course, is the start of a Hajj pilgrimage from Yemen on 13 May. So we've seen multiple news stories in particular from the Yemeni government side of people starting to go on Hajj to Saudi Arabia, either via flights or across the land border with Saudi Arabia at Wadiya. We have not seen corresponding accounts from the Houthis. This is probably because the Houthis, obviously the airport was out of commission, but the Houthis in Saudi Arabia have fought over the Hajj pilgrimage for a while now. In particular, last year when Saudi Arabia and the Yemeni government coordinated this large airlift of people from Sana'a to partake in Hajj. What happened was the Houthis used this opportunity when there were a bunch of airplanes in Sana'a, all at once, to seize all of the aircraft and say, we're not going to let these go. So Yemenia, the national carrier, effectively lost 4 of its airplanes all at once last year during the Hajj pilgrimage. So the Houthis have been complaining about Saudi Arabia not allowing people in Houthi-held areas to go on Hajj, or not facilitating that more properly, and that's a big reason. So then fast forward to a couple weeks ago when Israel conducted those large airstrikes against Sana'a airport. What happened was they blew up 3 of the 4 of these planes, I believe. Most of those planes are now destroyed. Most of them were not insured for operations in Yemen, which means they're not going to get the money back. But yeah, so that's it. But yeah, so that's the background. That Israeli strike took Sana'a International Airport offline for much of late last week, early this week. We did see the Houthi-aligned authorities announce the resumption of flights and the rehabilitation of Sana'a International Airport pretty quickly. On 15 May, the Houthis announced that they resumed humanitarian flights from the UN to and from Sana'a. And then on 17 May, we did see Houthi-aligned authorities announce resumed commercial flights to Jordan after several people were stranded at Queen Alia Airport following the Israeli strikes. And also on 17 May, we did see the Yemeni government aligned Yemeni Airlines and announced that it was signing a contract for another A320 Airbus plane, hopefully to join the fleet by the end of May 2025. In terms of banking and currency, it's not looking great for the Yemeni rial in Yemeni government-held areas, where it's at 25.44 against the dollar. I need to compile a historical data set to show you just how much this currency has deteriorated, but it's deteriorated a lot. It's deteriorated a lot recently. It's more stable in Houthi-held areas, just due to different fiscal controls. It's about 5.30, 5.40 against the dollar in Houthi-held areas, but there are other problems going on in Houthi-held areas because they're doing that. Liquidity issues, deterioration of the currency. That's a whole other thing I can get into if folks are interested. Please feel free to drop a comment in the chat that that's something you'd be interested in, and maybe I can make a video for it. But yeah, so that's it. That's all I have from me in terms of weekly roundup. I do want to recommend related readings, stuff I found particularly interesting reading this past week. 13 May, we did see the European Council on Foreign Relations put out a piece by a Yemeni analyst, Mesa Shuja Adin. Great analyst. Love the work that she does. The Paradox of Intervention: How U.S. Strikes in Yemen Empowered the Houthis. So definitely recommended read, looking at the sort of local political dynamics as a result of the ongoing international crisis surrounding Gaza and Yemen. More kind of military technical, TWZ put out a piece, How the Houthis' rickety air defenses threaten even the F-35. This came out following reports that at least at one point during the air campaign, Houthi air defense had forced an F-35 to maneuver to avoid a Houthi missile or something along those lines, which was considered a big deal in military technical circles, I suppose. I'm not a military technical guy, but reading this was very illuminating. And then on 16 May, Jacobin put out, Donald Trump is still punishing the people of Yemen, by Helen Lackner, I believe. Always recommend a piece by Helen Lackner. She's one of the deans of Yemen studies, written several books, lived in Yemen for decades. So love anything that she puts out. So thank you so much for listening. Feel free to drop any questions or comments in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. And again, if you need anything in terms of stuff related to Yemen, but also the Middle East, or just general research assistance, I am here, Nick Brumfield. Feel free to reach out again at info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com. Thank you so much.